I've said this in many conversations before today. Since the final happened, and even during the final, that the entertainment factor has been marred or overshadowed by the fact that the officiating of not only the referee but the TMO has been of sorts in terms of how inconsistent it has been, not just in that particular game, but in that tournament, and it was just highlighted a bit more in that game because obviously the microscope is on the performance of those officials. And, when you've got a referee who makes a call during the game, in the moment, allow play to carry on only for moments later, maybe even minutes later, for a TMO to pull the play back that the ref had already ruled out as play on. There was nothing there. I'm talking about one particular knock-on that happened during the game. And, these are knock-ons that, if you go back through the history of the sport, even back to amateur days, those types of knock-ons, although evident to, the camera, if the ref during the game says play on, you would normally expect it to play on and not be pulled back. Unfortunately for this particular final, we had a TMO who just seemed hell-bent. And he may not have been, but it just seemed that way. He seemed like he was hell-bent on picking up every little discrepancy or mistake. And I'm not just saying he was one-sided in that, because he did it to both sides, but there was particular moments in the game where you thought, as a fan, as a spectator, as someone who's watching their sport on the telly or in person, you thought, yes, we're about to get some good rugby played here, and some phases going, and maybe even see some tries scored. No, there were key moments in that game where the TMO showed up on the screen, or showed up more than most of the play or ball in play. And that kind of sucked from an entertainment factor. As a fan of rugby, as a fan of watching the sport, the code, you don't want to see that happen all the time. Like, what are we? The NFL?
Yeah.
With all these stop-starts? It's like,
Absolutely.
you guys are killing the game, and something really needs to be done about the rules, the way these games are being officiated. And, I get that there are moments in the game where there's a knock-on that you have to pull up, or there's head knocks that have to be pulled up. But if you're going to do that, pull them all up. Don't just pull on some and not others, which, it seemed like in the game. So for me, I was disappointed that it was a horrible spectacle in terms of wanting to see some good quality rugby for long periods of time. And at the same time, I thought, although these men are paid to do a job and officiate the game, I felt like they took up too much of the entertainment factor, the time during the match. And if you go back over a video of the game, you'll probably agree that they showed up on the screen more than the actual players at times. So for me, it was a great contest between two arch rivals, two juggernauts of the sport, and fair play to South Africa. They deserved the win. They took the, as we said in our last episode, the team that takes their chances the best is usually the team that wins. And it's not necessarily the team that deserves to win, because if we did a poll amongst the rugby world, you'd probably find that most of them probably would say New Zealand deserved to win. And especially if you're basing it on things like who scored the try, who who played the best rugby and who wasn't boring and that kind of stuff. But South Africa won, and they deserved to win, and they took it to us, and we had our chances. It wasn't to say that we didn't have our chances to win the game, because at the end of it all, it came down to 2 kicks that were missed, and those were missed opportunities, and we need to live with that. But yeah, moving on. I think it was an awesome contest in terms of watching the 2 teams do the best they could with what they had. Unfortunately, one side had 14 and the other side had 15, and it could have been evened out a bit, but it wasn't to be. And that's not for me to rule on. That's for everyone else that's part of the administration. But yeah, glad that it's all over now, and we can now rebuild post Fozzie era, and now in the, well, as of tomorrow, the Razor era.
Yeah, nice thoughts there. 100% agree. This is the World Cup final. This is the most important game in all of rugby. It's the most watched game, and just that influence of the TMO. I could hear him. He was like, might as well be sitting in the commentary box. You could hear him butting in every 5 minutes or something he was looking at. So I agree 100% with what you mentioned there, Joey. I thought it was a good game, very physical, like you mentioned, but also just so stop-start, just due to that refereeing and the influence of the TMO. Now, we've talked about the overbearing nature of the TMO before with Samoa's try and conversion being overruled in pool play. But Rog, mate, I'll come to you. Mate, give us your thoughts on the game. And do you think we have the balance right in terms of using the technology? Or would you like to see some changes in that regard? Just talking about back to the TMOs as well.
I think, first of all, congratulations to the Springboks. It's a game of opportunities. I think both teams had opportunities to finish out the game and have, whether it was the All Blacks or the Springboks, come out on top of the ledger. So I think Springboks took their chances and they were able to capitalise. Pollard having 100% record in all of the Rugby World Cup with his kicks. So it was always going to be dangerous to give away penalties, albeit, let alone yellow cards and then essentially a red card. I think, going back to your initial question, Stacey, about the TMO and the interjection, I think I just didn't want a game to be marred with, especially the final, as you've both mentioned, to be marred with the influence of the referee or a TMO. I don't think any official goes into any match, let alone the Rugby World Cup final, with the intention of the attention being taken away from the players and what they're trying to achieve. But I think, as we saw throughout the Rugby World Cup, and admittedly Sam Cane even mentions it too, with how it had been officiated throughout the tournament. They had the tone. But unfortunately, the player runs back towards him after trying to deviate, and Sam Cane happens to be just sort of following the ball, and then it's really hard to change and adjust your height when they have a sudden change of direction, and then that just happened to be coming towards him, and so it was hard for him to adjust, and he just had to make point of contact at that moment. It's really hard to adjust so the mitigating factors, I thought that it was going to remain a yellow because I can't remember the player, but it seemed like he was dipping and he's falling into the tackle, as opposed to Sam Cane sort of, even though Sam Cane wasn't bent. So that's what didn't help Sam Cane's cause, is that in that split second he couldn't adjust his height because the player had changed direction and then gone towards him. But going back to the TMO, what I know that there's a use for the TMO. It's really good. But I thought all along, from when the introduction of the TMO came to be, I could be wrong, but I thought it was when the referee calls on the TMO. But it seemed like the TMO in this particular match kept on interjecting and interrupting, even though Wayne Barnes may not have seen something, but then he kept on bringing it back. Sometimes the incident had happened a couple of minutes prior, and he pulls it back. We saw that Richie Mo'unga getting around Arenze, and then Smith scores that try, a brilliant try in the end, but it was disallowed, only to be brought back because of a knock-on at line-out time. Had the TMO not interjected, that would have just been I think he was just trying to bring it in as a knock-on, so disallowing the try. However, that's when Barnes picked up on the fact that, hold on, it's a bit is impeding on Retallick's hand, and that's what caused us to have a penalty from that. But those penalties come really important, because whether we opt to go for the line out or we go for the kick, and it came down to, once we did finally score, when Beauden Barrett scored from a brilliant Mark Telea run because of a wide ball from Geordie Barrett out to Mark Telea, and then Mark Telea beats three defenders, I believe it is. When was it? It was the second half, eh?
Yeah,
and then
second half.
Second half. So, and that's when he scores that try. He lays it back, and that was contentious because everyone was sort of trying to roar and say that it was a knock on. But Mark Telea goes back, bounces back once, and then bounces forward. And that was deemed going backwards. So that's where Beauden Barrett picks up, scores a try. Brilliant. But then that was the opportunity for that conversion. We missed that conversion to try and get closer or take the lead. But that was the difference. But I think for me, it was just the interjections of, again, I don't want to harp on about the TMO being the difference, but it's just getting an exact sort of policy around what is their role. Are they supposed to pick up all of the foul play, even though the referee has missed it on the field? Are they supposed to pick up all the knock-ons or forward passes, despite play carrying on and teams having scored tries or other? And then they don't rewind the clock, though, because that cancels that couple of minutes that's happened after a knock-on that the TMO sort of bring up with the referee. But I guess the other thing with the TMO is, if they're going to be that pedantic with calling back, when Smith's try was disallowed in the 54th minute, when he interjected after Mossad knocked it on at the 29th minute, but a minute 40 minutes earlier, that's when the Kane issue happened. So that's when Kane got yellow carded. But it only happened a minute and 40 seconds after. And then, so they're pulling it back. But then what about them interjecting when, in the 7th minute, when Itzabeth was leading with his forearm? If the TMO is looking at all these knock-ons and all these other bits of play, why haven't they noticed that in the 7th minute when Itzabeth was leading with the forearm and hitting, it was contact with the head of Sam Cane? They're not picking that up. They're not picking up the moment when Adi Savia in the 18th minute was penalised for not releasing. And then that was a controversial call, because where the TMO could have interjected and say, hold on, Wayne Barnes, you got it wrong. But they didn't interject. And Wayne Barnes, and then it came on the screen, we saw it clearly that Adi Savia did release before he tried to jackal for the ball. After he tackled, it was the replacement hooker who tried to take it. I think it was
Fourie, was it?
Yeah, Fourie. So then, and he got penalised for that. But then once it replayed on I thought initially that Wayne Barnes was apologising to Adi because he had seen it on the big screen. But then when I went back and watched the replay, Barnes's words were, "Sorry, I didn't see the replay." I think that indicates he didn't see the replay on the big screen. I thought you stayed on him. I didn't see you come off enough. Well, that's where the TMO, with all these other interjections, could have then said, actually, Wayne, he has come off enough. He has clear release. They slow it down. He's got all that footage at his disposal. He could have interjected there but he chose not to.
Mm.
And then he's apologised. So, apologised that he didn't see it on the big screen. But again, TMO could have interjected and said he can't take that penalty kick because actually there's been no offence. Adi Savea hasn't even offended in that instance. So Pollard again slots in another 3. And that's when they went up 9-3 to take more of a cushion. So it was just things like that. And then the Fafta Clerk knock on not long after that. That come in the 21st minute. Again,
Remember that.
Laura Wayne Barnes has become a physics teacher in that instance, because I guess it's just because Fafta Clerk was motioning towards, or was motioning backwards away from his scrum, the back of his scrum. And so the ball does drop, albeit in front of him, but law of physics says it's going back towards his own goal line, not forward. So even though it's in front of where Fafta Clerk was, but Fafta Clerk was motioning backwards. So that's the end. But it's almost like Wayne Barnes then become really patronising towards the All Blacks, because multiple times he was saying to them, it was knocked backwards, and then his last comment was, fellas, it's got to go forward for it to be a knock on. It's just things like that. So, but yeah, the TMO, he seemed to be dressed for the occasion. It was a collared shirt and tie as well, so he knew he was going to get some limelight. Well, he went out for it, but again, as much as I think there's indicators there that they could probably do that better, and because it seemed like TMO just had free license to interject and pipe in when he wanted to. And then it was interesting when the TMO spoke about Kolisi's yellow card. When they interjected there about foul play again. So he did draw attention to that. But then Wayne Barnes in the update said that I believe the shoulder hits the body of Savea first to lessen a head-on-head contact. So that was the update. Oh no, sorry, that was what the TMO said, but this is what Barnes said after they got updated from, and this was in the 52nd minute. The yellow card remains a yellow card. It's a high degree of danger, but there is mitigation due to some of the force going through the body and also the changing dynamic of the tackle. I was like, hey, come again? But then I think upon looking at the replay, Kolisi does, I guess, primarily does hit his torso, and then secondarily hits Savea's head. So if that was the mitigating factors as to why it remained a yellow card, Nisbet and Jeff Wilson didn't agree, because I think Nisbet's first remark was, "You've got to be kidding," while this is being updated by Barnes, and then Wilson said, "So that stays a yellow," and then Nisbet again, "You have got to be kidding." So basically they're verbalising what all of the spectatorship, especially if you're an All Blacks fan, whilst hearing all this. So as frustrating as it was, all of that away, it was still a physical game. It was still high intensity competition, but it just came down to those opportunities. How different would it have been had Jordie Barrett got that penalty from about 50 out on the slight angle, or the conversion from the left hand side for Mo'unga? It could have made the difference. We could have, people question, why did we not go for the 3 points, and why did we go for the line out? Well, we scored a try from going to the line out on one of those occasions. So, and that just goes the style of rugby for the All Blacks. And can we be conservative and just try and win a game, albeit by 1 point? We've done it before against France in the 2011 Rugby World Cup. And we know what close encounters are. And again, going back there, the French will be ruling that for, and this is 12 years on, their missed penalty in that game. And we just happened to have Beaver, who was able to slot the one penalty that gave us the edge. So, but I think I read somewhere that Beaver's kick would mean nothing had Tony Woodcock not scored. So There's just heaps of variables and a lot of factors that come into play. And again, we had a couple of opportunities. We wouldn't be even, we'll probably still be talking about the TMO and the influence that they had, but how close had one of those kicks had gone over by Mo'unga or Geordie Barrett, we would be celebrating the fact that we took that opportunity. Whereas Pollard, slotted all 4 opportunities. So,
yeah. Nice there, Rog. Good in-depth analysis. Joey, mate, I saw you shaking your head when we talked about Kolisi's half yellow, slightly half red card there. What did you take of that? What was your opinion on that one there? It looks like you disagree with the call.
Oh, just my opening chat about inconsistent refereeing. I get it. There was mitigating factors because Khaleesi's right shoulder hit the upper body of Artie before Khaleesi's head hit Artie's jaw and gave him a bleeding mouth or bleeding nose, and he fell backwards. I mean, if that's not worthy of a red card, but Sam Cane's shoulder a bit high to a guy who ended up playing a key role in the backline isn't an indicator, then flip. Something is definitely wrong. But, all we ask for is consistency as fans, Sure, if you're going to give our guy a red card, sure, that's fine. It was justified, whatever. But if you're not going to give a red card to someone else because of mitigating factors, mitigating as a word is overused in this World Cup, I think. And, it's one of those words where it just seems like, oh shit, here's a get out of jail free card for a referee to use mitigating as a way to give a red card or not give a red card. That particular incident, Khaleesi, nothing against the player. Obviously, there are moments in the game when you have to try and do a big hit, and even see apologise for it after in the after-match speech. The next day after the awards, after the the World Rugby Awards. But that particular incident, it just goes to show that even at tier 1 level, and this I may be on my own in the rugby world on this, even at tier 1 level, there still seems to be what I call unconscious bias, and that's another term that has been overused at this World Cup. But I think even in moments like this, it's warranted because there's an unconscious bias, I believe, against, dare I say it, the All Blacks.
Whoa.
And the so-called aura that the All Blacks have in the eyes of the Europeans. Wayne Barnes, he may not have been intentionally during the game or even before the game said to himself, he may not have said to himself, I'm going to go out there and penalise the All Blacks as much as I can. But, I don't know. I just think the TMO overplayed his part in this officiating, and I think he should probably give himself an uppercut. Not because the All Blacks lost, but because he overplayed his part. He just needs to stay in his lane, and I think TMOs are given too much to do. I mean, since when did they start looking at stuff outside of a ref's call? Why are the refs not given all the power or the overriding power to say, no, I didn't see anything wrong with that. Keep the play going, like he did, like Wayne Barnes did. He tried to say, no knock on, play on. No, old mate in the bloody ivory tower decided, no, this is my time to shine. I'm going to pull it all the way back after a few phases. And we're going to look at that because I spotted something. I fucking spotted something. It's like, fuck, mate, you're just trying to stay relevant. when you have no business bloody interrupting the game. Anyway, that's the way I felt. As an All Blacks fan, sure, I kind of sound biased and I sound like I'm butthurt, which I am. But at the same time, I just think these TMOs, especially the TMOs, not necessarily the refs, but the TMOs, they have far too much to do with the decisions that happen in a game. That's it.
We didn't try him in either against, I think it was about the 37th minute when the ball was coming out and it's a bit came into the play. I think Bowden Barrett was attempting to play the ball quickly from the back of the ruck, and Isabes is it's what you call lazy running, just trying to get back on side. Right. But it's almost like, hey, you could have taken another avenue, but he's seeing, okay, maybe Bowden's going to go right, and so he's come in and impeded the ball while he was trying to get back on side. But then from that, as they carried the advantage, Rieko Ioane, how close. Could have, gets tackled by Renda in the corner. That, again, another try gone begging. Because that was such a great tackle, because he stopped a sure try. And not only the small man trying to tackle Rieko Ioane and prevent him from scoring or prevent him from running even, but he even got a hand onto that ball. And
held the ball in the wrong hand. That was the problem.
Yep, that's it.
He's supposed to transfer to the left so he can fend off with the right. And he didn't. He held it on the right, and then he got tackled on the side.
But then he underestimated the pace of Arinze because he thought he had him on the outside. And for all money, it looked like when he started rounding him. But yeah, initially I thought it was Colby, but it wasn't. I was like, fuck. But, yeah. But then the penalty, but then we went only 12-6 after they pulled it back for the Isabet infringement, and then 12-6. But that's the way it stood going into the second half.
Yeah, nice thoughts there, boys. Yeah, I didn't have an issue with Barnes per se, like you guys have mentioned, but just an overbearing TMO who keep jumping in, and like he's both mentioned, I'd like to limit the amount the TMO can look at. Because he just kept on jumping in every 5 minutes or something. And so just if he can stick to the tries, or if the referee comes to him to have a look at something like you mentioned earlier, Joey, I think that's a good idea. But outside of that, I just want him to see him look at that. And also get back to that old rule. You can only look back 2 phases. And if it's missed after those 2 phases, that's it, dismissed. Move on. But he was looking back, something happened 2 minutes before. And I'm like, bruh.
Close to 2 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just that overbearing nature, which is unfortunate because that was, the drama and the close scoreline and the physicality and both teams were all in. That could have been one of it was a pretty good final, but it should have been one of the all-time great Grand World Cup finals. But just that TMO just coming in there. And it's something the game has to look at. We have to think about how much influence we want technology to have and what we want them to look at. Because it felt like that TMO felt that he had carte blanche and he could just look at whatever he wanted to and button whenever he wanted to. And that's not the way forward for the game. Otherwise, Joey, like you mentioned, it's going to be stop-start. It's going to talk about NFL now. So, yeah, they've got to put some limits on place, and World Rugby has to look at that.